My name is Robert. I've always been a fan of adventures. I frequently went on hikes and sometimes even escaped the urban hustle for a few months to venture into the wild forests or deep canyons. This time, my next destination was Yosemite National Park, a place I had dreamed of since childhood. The park lured me with its scenic landscapes, majestic waterfalls, and mysterious woods. But most importantly, I was drawn to the fact that there were hardly any visitors for a large part of the year, which I loved. One morning, standing on the edge of the Glacier Point granite ledge, admiring the mid-distance panorama, I spotted an abandoned camper far below at the base of a hill. Its metallic body gleamed in the sun, contrasting starkly with the dark green foliage. Descending to it, I was struck by the state of the camper. There was a spilled cup of coffee on the table next to an open book. I began looking for people, but no one was around, as if its owners had just vanished into thin air. Inside, I found a diary that belonged to a couple, Maria and Leonard. From the diary, I gathered that they had come here for a vacation to celebrate their wedding anniversary. I couldn't find any dates but surmised they must have arrived here recently. The initial entries were filled with joy and amazement at the surrounding beauty. However, as I read on, the entries became increasingly unsettling. They began to notice that someone or something was watching them. Maria wrote about strange noises near the camper at night. At first, they thought it was just regular animals trying to approach them, but with each passing night, the noises grew more terrifying and closer to the camper. Wanting to know more, I headed towards the Merced River, where, according to the entries, the couple went the following day. There, amidst boulders and trees, I found a torn woman's scarf and a tent that seemed like someone had recently inhabited. There were also numerous footprints, but it seemed there were more people than just two. I counted at least a dozen different prints, but the most terrifying discovery was yet to come. As I returned to the camper in the evening, I heard faint rustlings. Looking around, I spotted an old black and white photograph of a couple pinned to a tree. The same couple that had gone missing. Oddly enough, I hadn't seen this photo before. It felt like someone had just placed it there before my arrival. The faces in the photograph were distorted and scratched out. Beneath it, two stones lay embedded in the ground, engraved with the names Maria and Leonard. Since it was already dark, I decided to spend the night in the camper and head to the nearest police station in the morning to report what I'd found. The night was clear, and moonlight filtered through the small window of the camper, creating a cozy ambience. But a few hours later, I heard a faint yet distinct metallic tapping just as I drifted off to sleep. It seemed distant and muffled, like something or someone was lightly tapping on the side of the camper. I turned on my flashlight and glanced out the window but saw nothing. Dismissing it as the sounds of nature or the wind, I tried to go back to sleep. However, after a while, the tapping resumed, only louder this time. Now, it sounded like a slow scraping atop the camper's roof. I turned on the flashlight again, stood up, and cautiously peered through the window, trying to spot the source of the sound. But apart from the dark trees and pale moonlight, I saw nothing. Yet the scraping continued, now clearly moving from one side of the camper to the other. My heart raced. I tried calling the police, but there was no signal. The scraping grew louder and ominously close, as if something wanted to get inside. Suddenly, all went quiet. That brief moment of silence felt like an eternity. And then, I heard a whisper, sounding as if it was right next to my ear. "You're not alone." After that, sleep was impossible for me. By dawn, the eerie noises had ceased. Exhausted and shaken, I looked outside. On the soft ground beneath the camper's windows, I noticed bizarre markings resembling the imprints of massive human hands leading deeper into the forest. These hands were unnaturally large. Distraught, I hastily left the area. Upon returning to the town and informing the police about my findings, they paid little heed to my tales of the previous night. However, they did have some information about the missing couple. It turned out that Maria and Leonard had disappeared back in the 70s. But how could one explain the coffee I found near the camper, still warm as if brewed only moments ago? No one knows what happened to the couple. But one thing I'm sure of: the mysteries of Yosemite National Park are deep and inexplicable, and some are best left undisturbed. My name is Mark. It was 2018 when my friends and I decided to go camping on one of North America's remote islands of the Great Lakes. We chose Manitou Island, located on Lake Michigan. We didn't pick this island at random. Rumors abound that many tribes that lived here before the arrival of Europeans considered this island sacred. We also heard that those who come to this island witness inexplicable things. Some see unusual animals, while others encounter people from the tribes of the past. Our group consisted of 4. Me, my friend Lisa, my old buddy Jacob, and his sister Anna. We rented a boat and headed for the island. Upon arrival, the first thing that struck us was the dense forest that surrounded us. The place seemed simultaneously beautiful yet eerie and mysterious. We chose our camping spot, set up tents, and by evening, we lit a campfire and began preparing a delicious dinner of sausages. We shared stories. Everything was calm until, as it began to get dark, we heard strange sounds in the distance like singing or chanting. The sounds were faint, coming from deep within the forest. Anna, who was interested in the history of the local tribes, suggested these might be the spirits of the ancients still guarding their lands. We were, of course, skeptical about this and joked about sacred land and all that nonsense, as it seemed to us then. Later in the evening, after everyone had gone to sleep, I was awakened by a whisper. I peeked out of the tent and saw figures around the fire. It was too dark to see clearly, but I could tell these were people in tribal attire, their faces painted, and they held something that looked like staffs. They performed some ritual, placing strange symbols of stones and twigs around the fire. They suddenly looked in my direction, and seeing me, they swiftly vanished. I woke everyone up and relayed the story, but my sleepy friends weren't convinced, as they hadn't seen anyone around. They thought I might have dreamt the whole thing. Strangely, they persuaded me that it might indeed have been a dream. We explored the island the next day, finding no signs of human presence. The following night, we went to sleep early, exhausted from our day exploring the island. I was awakened by the sound of footsteps and whistling. Someone or something was running past our camp. I emerged from the tent but saw no one. Then, as I crawled back under the blanket, I heard a loud, eerie scream. My friends woke up, too, having listened to it. We left the tents to look around but saw no one. Yet, the screaming persisted and grew louder. The screams grew louder, and now they sounded almost by our camp. We scrambled into our tent quickly, trying to be as quiet as possible. Then, through the tent's thin walls, we heard loud speech in a completely unfamiliar language. It was clear there were many speakers, and their voices intertwined, creating a strange, ominous chorus. We tried to understand what they were saying, but the words seemed utterly alien. Lisa and I clung to each other, trying to calm down. Jacob whispered, "We need to stay calm and not draw attention." But how could one remain calm, hearing these sounds? The hours dragged on endlessly. The noises did not subside. Oddly, no one tried to enter our tent. At dawn, when the first rays of sun began to pierce the thin fabric of the tent, the voices suddenly went silent. In the morning, we found our clothes scattered everywhere, but the strangest part was that all the items had previously been inside our tent. How could someone have taken them out without touching us? Jacob noticed barefoot tracks near the tent. Fear enveloped us. We decided not to waste time and to leave the island as quickly as possible. Packing up camp, we rushed to the boat. As we boarded the boat, I realized one thing. Sometimes, it's better to let the past be and not interfere with what's sacred to others. Some mysteries should remain unsolved. My name is Megan. Last summer, my best friend Lisa and I went camping in Yosemite National Park in California. We both love nature and decided to spend the weekend immersed in it. Only a few other groups were in the spot we chose, and by evening, we felt pretty secluded. It soon got dark, and we lit a campfire. Suddenly, two men emerged from the darkness. They behaved rather oddly. One was holding a pocket knife, immediately putting us on edge.
"You know, there are many secret places in the woods,"
said the one without the knife, smiling far too broadly.
"Places where the forest keeps its secrets."
We silently tried to assess the situation. The men looked uneasy and not entirely sober.
"We're tired of hiding our secrets," the second one said, playing with his knife. "It's time to share."
Lisa tried to keep the conversation going and distract them with words while I discreetly made my way to the car for help.
"Are both of you locals?"
Lisa asked, trying to divert their attention.
"The forest knows us as we know it, but tonight is special. The moon tells us to share our secrets."
At that moment, I managed to get to the car and dialed 911. When the police arrived, both men were in shock. They were indeed locals and, as it turned out, suffered from mental disorders. They didn't want to harm us but only share their secrets, meaningless stories they had made up. But they scared us greatly, and we decided not to stay any longer at that campsite, not wanting any more uninvited guests.